Paul said, we all share similar issues. So the march that happened, actually there were 5 marches that happened in different cities in Mexico, the Zapatista movement. Silent marches with thousands of people, and many of people in Indian countries share bonds of, whether it's ancestry or beyond that, with tribes from beyond the United States borders. So we have people who are tribal from Central America, and we have people who are tribal from Canada. I myself am a member of the Sisseton-Wahpeton Oyate, which is a nation of Dakota people who are spread throughout, over the border, basically, in the United States and Canada. And also, I'm descended from the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Ottawa, which also is over the border. So there are connections that we have to the people in these places. Idle No More itself began as a series of teach-ins that happened in response to a series of bills. One of the main bills that you'll hear about is C-45, but there's actually a whole bunch of bills that were passed without input from First Nations people, First Nations leaders. And actually, First Nations leaders were shut out of the process. And many of these bills, they're problematic for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons is that they seek to open up indigenous people's lands for development or resource extraction, taking away some of the protections that have been put in place. And another piece of it that's problematic is that this is to be done without the consent or even consultation of the tribes in those areas. And so it represents a very serious setback for indigenous self-determination. So the teach-ins happened, and then so there was a movement building, and then Chief Teresa Spence of the Attawapiskat Nation began a hunger strike. And that was a very important piece of this, because she, fasting in many indigenous cultures is an act of a spiritual act, but it's also, what she was doing was also a political act. So it was significant for a number of reasons, and her actions helped to galvanize the movement across Canada, which then spread, as I mentioned before. So this is a picture of us making some signs in my garage. Viva la resistencia de indígenas del mundo. We wanted to ensure that this message is across borders. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the similarities between some other movements that have happened recently, and Idle No More. And oftentimes you'll hear them compared to, this movement compared to the Occupy movement and the Arab Spring. And so one of the similarities is that the movements are largely youth-driven. And I think that's really important, because the youth know that they are inheriting ecological and social problems that are are very devastating. And so they've been taking the lead in these movements, and it's really inspiring to see. I think one of the differences with Idle No More is that we've also seen the intergenerational aspect, where elders have come out in support as well. And that is an indigenous value, that elders are held in esteem. So just a neat picture that Zoltan took. This was at this was when the group had marched down to Percival Landing right on the water. And this is my daughter, Ruby. Another similarity is the use of social media. This is a neat picture, a logo that has been used to identify the I Don't Know More movement. And so I just wanted to say a couple words about using social media as a tool. It's been a very useful tool for activism. One of the differences between the I Don't Know More movement and the other movements that I mentioned is the focus on decolonization. And I remember sort of being a part of the Occupy stuff that had happened. The issue of decolonization had come up, and we talked about what does it mean? What does decolonization mean? So I put this definition here. This is a definition that I came up with when I went through the MPA Tribal Governance Program. And essentially what it is it's a practice, it's a concept and practice that Indigenous people all over the world are using to break free from cycles of violence, discrimination, despair that have been created by hundreds of years of colonization. So in order to accomplish this, what that means is that tribes are relying on their traditional values. And they're applying creative methods for meeting the needs of their people in a rapidly changing world. So using the traditional values and adapting them so that future generations can have a chance. It also means relying less on the structures that have been imposed upon us by colonization, and it's related to self-determination, the right of people to organize themselves in the way that they have since they were created. Another difference between the movements is the role of women. I think this issue is of particular importance for in Indigenous communities because women so often face much more violence than in non-Native communities. So it's significant because the teach-ins, I Don't Know More teach-ins, were started by a group of women, and there are so many issues that are affecting women, including in British Columbia, where there are missing and murdered women, and there have been set up processes to deal with this, but those don't have the support of tribal communities. So there's ongoing issues that are happening for women, and respecting women is an Indigenous value. Respecting Mother Earth is an Indigenous value, and those two things are connected. I think that another difference is the fact that the I Don't Know More movement is political and social, but it's also about protecting Mother Earth too. So I wanted to throw in a couple pieces of artwork here because I'm an artist and I'm interested